when I then started to engage daily, I was going through Jesus as the door and entering in and surrendering as a living sacrifice. And I went through that process, and he took me through the tabernacle in heaven, which the earthly tabernacle was patterned after. So there has always been one, which represents us, spirit, soul, body, if you like, the three-part tabernacle of man, and ultimately, I didn't know all this then, particularly. I just was going through the experiences, but the earthly tabernacle had various things in it. You had an outer court and an inner court and Holy of Holies, which is representative of body, soul, spirit. And as I was engaging, then you have things like the laver, which is the water that they had to wash themselves before they went in any further. So that meant my body and the things that my physical body had been engaged in, or I wanted to surrender, and I wanted to be clean and cleansed. And symbolically, this isn't, it's the picture of the process of transformation that I was going through. And then I went into the inner court, and then there are things in there, the table with the showbread and the menorah and other things. And I engaged with the seven spirits of God there, and I would engage with sort of things there figuratively as I went through this process. And eventually I went into the Holy of Holies and engaged the Ark of God's presence there, which then took it to a whole different level. But I went through a process to get there. So the living sacrifice process was, I am surrendering to only do what I see you doing. Now I want to see what you're doing. So open your heart to me to know what you're doing. Now that for me was, well, what am I supposed to do then? At that point in my life, it was like, okay, well, what's my mandate? What are you calling me to do today? How can I unfold your heart so I know what you're doing? And I engaged with the Ark. And initially, in my experiences with the Ark, it was what was in the Ark. And figuratively, again, there were three things in the literal Ark, which were patterned after the heavenly Ark. Therefore, you had the tablets, which were, let's say, what God writes on my heart, because he doesn't write on tablets of stone anymore. He writes his heart onto my heart, or I resonate with him. There's all sorts of terminology. I didn't use the term resonate then. I just saw it as he's writing something on the tablets of my heart, which will give me guidance or direction or wisdom or insight, whatever it might be. And then there were the manna, which came out of heaven, which represented God's provision. So I'm not doing this in my own strength. I'm doing this in his strength. So I'm receiving the flow of life that comes from him. So I'm drinking from the source, which is heavenly. And then you had Aaron's rod that budded, which is symbolic of the authority I have now to outwork the Father's heart in that way. And I went on for a while like that. And every day I would sort of, okay, God, what are we doing? I want to engage your heart. So I surrender as a living sacrifice, prepare me for today. And I would see it as, hey, I want to be prepared for whatever comes today that's outworking your heart. And then after a while, the Father stopped me doing that because I was focusing on what is it we're going to be doing and what do you want me to do, rather than our relationship and the intimacy of it. So I would open my first love gate for the internal experience, and then I would be like, okay, what are we going to do? I'm going to go and engage as a living sacrifice now. But then one day the Father just hugged me and didn't let me go. And I'm sort of like, well, what are we going to do? Why can't you let me go? Let me go. And it was like he didn't for months and months, because he brought me back to everything that you're doing, which is good, has to have a deeper foundation of relationship if it's going to be an expression of my heart. Otherwise, you will be expressing my heart through the filters of your heart, which will be twisted usually, because we see things through our own filters, our own understanding, experience, and everything else. So God was showing me, you can't do this in your own understanding. You need to know me deeper, and you need to know yourself in a way which you're never going to get just by doing stuff. So then as he did that, then I went back to that process of surrendering myself as a living sacrifice, and it was a totally different dynamic, because I began to understand God and God's love and his desire for me to enter into relationship with him and everything else, in a way that I hadn't done before. And so now it was more orientated towards love. If you enjoy these videos, would you please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe? It really does help. Thank you very much.